Well, want me to call to order here, Fire Commission, and on the agenda, looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
The appropriate meeting notices, Jenny?
Second.
And on the minutes from
Yes.
September, okay, on the minutes of September 3rd.
I would move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Was that Bill?
Yeah, I moved and Linda seconded.
Yes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Who came in, Inga?
Not John.
Okay.
Sorry.
Item 3 on the agenda.
Kayla.
Public participation. Anything that's not on the agenda here?
If anyone does want to speak, then you just need to unmute yourself.
Anybody have anything that's not on the agenda here for public participation? If not, we'll move forward. Brings us to old business, item A. Possible discussion and action regarding increase of $15 an hour to a $15 an hour wage for firefighters and EMS staff. So this is a discussion we brought back from last meeting. Yes, Linda?
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to deny this request for the 2020 budget and continue the discussion in the 2021 budget due to the changes and the additions that we provided in the February benefits.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Teresa then. Discussion on the motion?
Can I have an explanation, Linda, as to where this is coming from?
Yeah, this is coming from the fact that we don't have this addition planned in our 2020 budget. It's more appropriate to look at any change for this payroll in our 2021 budget.
Okay. Knowing that we have money that both the city and the town have put into an additional fund, and knowing that the staffing has become an increasingly larger concern with each passing day.
One concern that was raised last meeting relative to it would be an assumed commitment to maintaining an increase in salaries and having to fund that indefinitely without knowing the complete model or funding sources. I just want to bring up that was part of the discussion last time.
Mm-hmm.
And so looking ahead to 2021, I would argue that we wouldn't have anybody to report to these emergencies if we are not able to figure out a staffing model.
We have a staffing model already in place. We're not at a crisis mode right now.
I would like to hear from our department members as to whether that's the case, please.
Mr. Chairman, you know,
Yes.
we're having the discussion that would come, you know, it's not a discussion to the motion. It's the discussion that of the issue. And we have a motion that should be dispatched if we want to have the discussion that's on the agenda.
Well, the discussion is about the motion for a change in salary, or hourly wage rather. And by the way, if this requires a modified budget, the municipalities would technically have to approve funding it. Unless there's some way of modifying the overall budget funds to accommodate this wage change. It's something that we'd have to request or recommend to the municipalities if it required further funding.
I have a question. I just wondered, have this wage increase, if it would go, is that going to affect like Harmony Townships and some of the other townships that are, you know, under your contract?
So Jeff is chair for the Town of Harmony. Jeff, the short answer is it could after this budget year. We're just finishing up a current contract, so the current contract wouldn't be modified. But yes, it could impact the proposed budgeting process in the future.
Yeah, I understand that. I was led to believe that you were requesting yet this year about 150,000 from Harmony Township, and then asking for another 150,000 or give or take next year. Is that what you guys have spoken about so far?
No, I believe it was, there would be no request for 2020 budget process. It's what we're working on is 2021 budget and those funds. So I don't think
Okay.
there's been any implication that we want to modify the current commitment to 2020.
I think some of the confusion may be that we've had numbers to look at as far as if we changed the model, this is what it would have been this year. But
Okay.
there's no intent on anybody's part that the current contract would not be carried out.
Okay.
But we are under a short timeline to figure out and hopefully come to some consensus on a 2021 budget. Would have been nice to have another month or two to work on this, but this is where we're at right now. And so again, the answer to your question on this proposed wage change wouldn't affect 2020 for contract services to the towns for this year.
All right. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion?
Teresa has a question.
Yes, you know, as we had said last time, we had developed this budget and agreed with it to move forward with this hourly wage because we were giving the additional funds to move forward with the benefits instead. And that was part of the agreement. I would have to be given very strong proof that things have changed drastically in order to change my belief that the budget needs to be changed. And I would have to be shown a great deal of documentation to prove that that change is necessary. And I haven't been shown anything other than a proposal to make that change and change that budget. So I would like to go ahead and vote.
If there's not any further discussion on the motion, I'll call for the vote. Jessica made a comment. Is there any reply to Jessica's comment about a trying to identify a crisis mode or what you meant by
Okay.
it?
To me, you made a comment about not being in a crisis mode yet. What do I consider a crisis mode? Well, Jessica, actually, we were in bad shape before the pandemic hit us. And now we all know all of the development that is coming into the area still yet this year. So we know that we need to move forward so that we don't have a crisis where we don't have people to come to these calls.
So what you're referring then to, Linda, is 2021 focus. Is that what you were
That's
referring to?
correct. I just wanted to see this in the 2021 focus. We don't have a lot of time to discuss this. And we all have our budgets that we have to turn in. It's 2020. If we were to do that, when are you going to get it? When are you going to get it? In January? I mean, this is just, to me, it's an unrealistic question at this time. Now, if you would have asked this in March or April, it would be a different story. But right now, what I see happening is undue pressure on this commission to accommodate a request 2 months before the year end, and not even giving us the chance to just put it in our 2021 budget like reasonable people do with their budgets. We know what we have to do. We know what your request is, and we honor your request, and we have tried to honor all of your requests. But 2020 is only 2 months out, 2021. Do you want us to focus on 2020 right now, or would you like for us to put the time into 2021? I guess that's the question, because I believe we need to be looking at 2021. So I would like to see a vote on this motion. We can have the discussion in the 2021 budget and do this in a more economic and frugal way.
I wanted to address Jessica's comments because we've been stressing the valued input from staff. So I'd wanted at least her to be recognized. So I'll call for the question. I'll call for the question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Ernie has a comment.
Who does?
And I see that there are individuals making comments in the chat. And if we can make those comments directly to the commission, just because we have at least one person on a phone. So I want to make sure that the commission's seeing the comments and hearing them and understanding them.
Ernie, did you have
So
a comment?
if the chair,
Ernie?
Yes, sir. Sorry, I'm trying to get everything unmuted. Yes, sir. So you'll see with Dan's discussion on the financial position of the fire department tonight, we're basically at 36% of our 39%, projected 39% where we should be with our remaining budget. We're at 36% now. So the additional funding, we have about 3% to work with. So just keep that in consideration. And I just want to remember, or just go back, the reason why it was submitted, and I don't know who submitted it, but the reason was because we wanted to meet the market for the staffing. And just to let everybody know, we did have difficulty trying to fill this weekend's staffing formula, our staffing chart to fill everybody. We still have one available opening. I believe that's for Sunday. And so I just want to lay the facts out on the table so the commission can make a decision. Thank you.
All right. If there are no further comments, I'll call for the question again. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
How many ayes were that? And Linda?
Myself and Teresa.
Teresa, was that an aye?
Yes.
And I vote aye. I recognize 3 ayes. Nays?
Nay.
Brian, am I covering for John tonight?
Yes.
I'll vote no.
So I see 3 noes. So a motion fails without a majority. 3 ayes and 3 nays.
Okay, well, where are we getting the money go? Is somebody that is voting no for 2020? I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Bill looked like he was going to say something. I think he's frozen though.
You're muted.
I can unfreeze here. I voted no because I think we need to have a full discussion of this issue for 2020. It would be, I am a little disturbed about the fact that doing it for 2020 does sort of set a precedent for 2021 and kind of ties that discussion up. However, I do believe that through this year, we've heard an increasing amount of information regarding staff shortages and the difficulty of the department to be able to fully staff their shifts. When we look at the $10, the $10 I think is embarrassing, frankly. In the general conversation in our communities and in our nation, the $15 wage has been put out there as kind of the point, and we've seen lots and lots of non-public private employers falling in line with that $15, recognizing that over time wage scales for low-end folks have fallen behind in terms of buying power. What we've seen presented at our last meeting was an indication that crossing guards are being compensated at a rate higher than the $10. I don't know, from the dollars that have been presented, it looks as if we would be able to at least fund a portion of the balance of the year at that $15 rate. Now, whether that would start November 1st, November 15th, but I'd like to have that discussion and not just say absolutely no through December 31st. It is unconventional, I would agree, coming in with this request relatively late in the year. However, I do believe that there's been a gradual case that's been presented by both Chief Rhodes and by other members of the department that the staffing issue has become, if not critical at this point, getting pretty close to critical at this point. And so I'd like to have at least a discussion as to whether or not we could implement this at some point prior to the end of the year.
I guess Dan, if I understand some best guess scenarios in your estimates, it appears like there's approximately 39% of payroll left and 36% of the budget remaining for wages. So
let me get the sheet pulled up. I got.
So if I understand that there's a projected shortfall, which we understood may happen because of some decisions made back in February.
Correct. And if we look at what just doing really simple math at $5 an hour times 3 people for about 90 days, so that'd be October, November, and December. And once you throw in the average ratio of those that are eligible for WRS and all that good stuff, we're probably, that incremental increase is probably 37,000. And if memory serves me correctly from February's discussion, we were anticipating somewhere around a $20,000 to $25,000 shortfall when the dust settled on those decisions that were made in February. So if we take those two, 37 and 25, it's about 60,000, 62,000. And we have a fund balance of 209. So you'd be taking just a little under 25% of that away.
So again, I understand that there's a projected shortfall in payroll budget. What was budgeted for payroll, there's a shortfall?
Correct, based on the decisions that were made in February.
So since the commission doesn't have the authority to increase the budget without municipal authority, I would suggest that a motion to further exceed the budget would be out of order.
Well, this body doesn't have the authority to take from each other or from your individual coffers and contribute additional, but there is a reserve of $209,000
Okay,
that this body has control over.
yes.
Just quick, it looks like John was able to come on.
Hi, everybody. I apologize. I've had some difficult day today, so I'm running late, unanticipated, and my phone was not on. So I am now back and just trying to pick up where you guys left off.
John, we're in the middle of discussion on item 4A, discussing the $15 an hour salary wages.
Okay.
There was a motion to deny the request that failed on a 3-3 vote. So we're continuing discussions on that $15 wage.
Okay. I guess my input on, go ahead.
Quite a bit of discussion on it, so.
Linda, go ahead, Linda. What were you gonna say?
I was just going to ask Dan now. We made a change in the budget in February, and that was for the benefits, correct?
Nope, that wouldn't have been benefit related. That would have been, I think that's when we went to the $10 an hour paid on call, if memory serves me right, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
That was a long time ago.
Do you remember if we had to do any type of a budget adjustment in January when we approved the paramedics? Or did we already have that in our 2020 budget?
Yeah, that was all kicked in.
Okay.
Whatever the decisions were in February, and perhaps Chief Rhodes or Deputy Chief Lucas and Parker can help jog my memory, but I just remember that the aggregate cost of those decisions was somewhere in that $20,000 to $25,000 range. And I don't know if you have any recollections, because I know that meeting was at Town Hall.
And I thought it was transitioning from that platoon system and paid on call to getting paid on premise. And initially the consideration was internally of minimum wage, and then we tried to bump it up to the $10 an hour, which we knew we were going to dip into the reserve fund to fund the staffing model. I think that's what that move was.
I think what Linda's referring to, and Linda can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, is when we made the transition to WRS as an additional benefit to the fire department staff and the costs associated with that.
Yes.
All right. So yeah. So I think that's. I don't remember the total cost associated with it, but it was a benefit that was provided for by the Fire Commission this year, or late last year. Everything runs together now. It's just one long day. But yeah, that was an additional benefit that was added. Yeah.
And we had to get approved to be in WRS like late Q3, Q4 of last year. So all that WRS stuff was included in the 2020 budget. What the increase was anytime you increase pay, all those benefits are also tied to compensation, just like workers' comp and all the other ancillary costs that sometimes get forgotten about. And so I just remember the aggregate net cost projected out somewhere in that $20,000 to $25,000 range.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah,
I think at this
go ahead.
time, I want to yield the chair to John.
Thank you, Brian. Was that Bill? I couldn't hear who.
Yes.
Was. Yep, go ahead, Bill.
It was. I think we're putting the cart before the horse in terms of dealing with the 2020 version before we deal with the 2021, because, in fact, if we were to pass it and dip into reserves to do it, then we've sort of made some decisions in terms of 2021, or would be difficult to undo that. Based on that, I would make a motion that we table the discussion of the increase for 2020, and that come back at our next meeting to discuss after we've made the decision on 2021.
Second.
Okay, the motion to table the current proposition about the 2020 $15 an hour pay has been motioned by Bill to table. Linda second. Seeing that there's no discussion available for this transaction, we'll have to proceed to voting. All those, say again, Brian?
Who was the second?
That was Linda.
I was.
I just want to note, Jenny, it appears as though if John joining, then Jim will yield as alternate.
All right, for the record, so Jim will take his alternate seat one more time. All right, now back to the motion.
Excuse
Linda?
me, John, it looks like Chief Lucas has a comment for everyone. The amendment in February was to increase paid on premise from 3 to 4 during the week and from 4 to 5 on the weekends.
Okay,
Chris?
Chris, can you explain that?
That was what it was for. Decrease the hourly rates. We could get more people on here on premise. It was for.
Okay. So right now we have a motion on the table. We have to table the motion in question. All those in favor of tabling the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Motion carries. With a, Beth, did you say no?
I did.
Motion passes. The motion will be tabled until next meeting. All
John,
right.
if you don't mind, could I just jump in real quick? This
Sure,
is
go
Al
ahead,
from the city.
yeah.
I just from my perspective, I think Bill kind of hit it right on the head. I don't know that anybody's necessarily opposed to a $15 an hour wage, whether that be for 2020 or 2021. But I think the issue at hand here is, yes, we have reserves, but until the funding model is kind of sorted out, we could dip into reserves for 2020 and make it $15 an hour. And then next year, if we don't have the funding model figured out, now we're looking at a $200,000 increase that neither municipality could possibly absorb with levy limits.
Mhm.
So until that funding structure is kind of figured out, it's not to say that it can't be done, but I think that that's where the attention needs to be. If we're going this direction, whether it's $15 an hour, whether it's consolidation, or whether it's standalone department, the funding model that, kind of Dan has presented, although there may be changes to it, that's really the paramount discussion at this point. That's the linchpin. Without that, there's really, we're kind of dead in the water unless we go to a massive referendum for both entities that likely wouldn't fare too well in the eyes of the public. And I understand from the town's perspectives that, there's some sticker shock there, but I think through some conversations, that's where the attention needs to be. Again, I don't know that anybody's opposed to a $15 an hour wage, whether that's 2020 or 2021, but how are we going to fund it? We can dip into the fund balance this year, but that creates a structural deficit next year.
Mhm.
I mean, that's exactly what a structural deficit is when you dip into fund balance to pay for operational expenses. And when you don't have a funding mechanism for operational expenses, you've put yourself in a very precarious situation. And nobody wants to be put in a situation on January 1 where we say, we don't have a new funding structure. Neither municipality can come up with an additional $120,000 to fund a $15 wage increase. Sorry, folks, you're going back to $10. That is literally the definition of a structural deficit. And I think until that question is answered, that's exactly where we're headed. So that's just my opinion. I don't have a vote. But I think, the funding structure is the paramount discussion at this point.
And while I completely understand what you're saying, Al, my concern is that whatever we've been presented for 2021 is not going to take this into account. And so I'm just looking to start with a foothold. I understand that this is going to create a concern, but at the same time, knowing that our staffing is not complete at this point, that we are losing people, that we are unable to fill positions, this is of major concern right now, in my opinion. I would also say that it's concerning to me that our time between our meetings, we're not able to get a lot of the work done necessary to get us moving. So the numbers that we have presented, what are we looking at for an hourly wage? Because I know that we have to go into budgeting. I know that we have to adopt our 2021 budget. But if yet another night is going to go by that we're not going to be able to determine what that looks like for us and base it on a $10 an hour, that's very concerning to me.
Well, and to that point, I would say that, this commission, in all due respect, saw the funding model on June 30th. And there has been no decision made since June 30th on a funding structure. That was 3 months ago. If that decision would have been made and conversations, although they be tough conversations, were had and leadership was shown, we probably could have had that funding structure in place and probably adopted a $15 an hour wage increase a long time ago. So June 30th was when that was shown. And we still haven't decided on it. I don't believe conversations have even happened with the townships. These poor folks are coming on tonight and seeing this maybe for the first or second time. So, I mean, again, I don't have a vote. I'm not on the commission.
I would just also like to add, and Beth, I totally appreciate what you're saying about the staffing, but this is the way that it has been for a very long time. And that's why we have taken the steps to do what we're doing. That's why we added the benefits. That's, we've looked at all of the different, we did that change in February. I mean, we're doing what we can do with what we have, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's just not going to happen overnight. And I feel bad that these people make that much money. I fought for $1 an hour with a totally different commission, except for Brian, probably 15 years ago. Nobody wanted to give him $1 an hour raise because it wasn't in the budget. We didn't have the money. And this is why we're moving ahead with what we're doing. This is why we had this is why the city of Milton and the town board took the time to look at the 2 models that were given to us from our department so that we can take care of this. But continuing to, it's been a problem. It's always been a problem. People come and go. They come and sometimes they're there, they get their training, and then they move on to the next station. We have lost a lot of our people. They've moved on.
Linda, if I may, so I understand what you're saying, but the whole conversation, the entire time, over the past 4 years of when I've been on this commission, 3.5 years, that system doesn't work. It's no longer producing the same outcomes because those volunteers have become smaller and smaller. So yes, we were being used as a stepping stone, and we still may be a stepping stone in the future if we don't have as competitive full-time benefits. But we'll retain people for longer, and the idea is we're going to have a better structure in place for sustainability, because the structure that we had worked for the time that we had people that were in the station. Now that those people are no longer in the station, we can't expect that system to facilitate the same results. So yes, it's the same problem we've had for years and years, but the results have gotten worse and worse and worse because there's fewer and fewer people to draw upon. So I agree with what you're saying, but at the same time, it's changed enough to where we do have to look at a different model to accomplish the same objectives of providing that service. So, I mean, I agree and I disagree a little bit, but to Beth's point, we do have a serious problem. We have asked for information, at least for this past meeting. We were anticipating 5 things that we were going to go through and discuss. And part of that was a budget reflecting a $15 an hour impact on what that wage looks like. And it sounds like tonight that that's not going to be available to us. So one of the biggest concerns, and we heard it last meeting from the other chief, is that there is a serious issue, and it's stemming worse and worse. It's systemic to the point where it's causing unyielded results. It's just halting the way that the morale in the station is looked at, and the trust of the leadership of the commission. It's putting a lot of extra pressure on the chiefs for making decisions, regarding the financial issues that we're facing. At some point, where can we put a stability in our department? And if that comes with full-time personnel to alleviate that, to make that stability happen, then I think that's what it comes down to in the long run. But in the short run, to alleviate the problem, it will be to get them a reasonable wage, so they will come back into the station more likely to take on those calls until we can create a system full-time. So I guess we are all on the same page as far as what needs to happen over the next 10 years. Maybe we just don't know exactly how we're going to get there financially with the impact it has on each municipal budget. And I was hoping tonight with the municipal budgets, or with the fire department budget that was going to be presented, we can take that information back and filter that information into our municipal budgets and determine what our overall cost impact will be on our municipalities, to determine if that $15 an hour wage will be sufficient for what our municipal budgets can handle. So go ahead.
Chair,
Go ahead, Bill.
Coming back to Al's question, the missing piece here really is the township piece. We have not heard from the township. The only way we're going to be able to afford this is, in fact, if we're able to restructure the income. And that's going to take some cooperation from the towns. To this point, we've had, very limited opportunity to hear from the towns. They've had very little opportunity to see some hard figures. There have been some figures very recently provided for them, so that they've gotten, I think, a look at them now. The order here really should be, can we restructure? If we can't restructure, we're in bad shape, or we're in the scenario that Al is talking about, a structural deficit. We can rob from Peter to pay Paul for this year, but what do we do next year? What do we do for 2021? And, a vote on increase for 2020 puts us in that very difficult position for 2021. So, the township funding and the restructuring of our funding is really the first step here.
Mr. Chair, so with the contract towns, I'd like going to work on some data, and the chief was going to be heavily involved in working on that data. So I would ask if the chief has anything to comment on those discussions that we had with the city of Janesville.
Brian, thanks. No, I don't have any data right now to share with the commission. Still working on that process.
So our discussions kind of revolved, well, it was focused completely on consolidation issues. We did ask the city of Janesville if they could identify what they saw a model looking like and what they might propose or might consider would be logical for them, not only from a funding standpoint of operating, but also how they might see capital ownership on it too. So kind of left that in the city's hands to reply to that, and we haven't heard anything since that meeting. Mayor, do you have any more input?
Sure. Well, we talked about what a future model might look like, and then we also talked about reorganizing the current shared services agreement and what that might look like, and are there changes to make to that in the meantime. And those are things that I know that Ernie was going to work on. We certainly didn't anticipate like all of this would be completed by this meeting, that people would have time to be thorough, thoughtful, and intentional on any resolutions or amended shared services agreements that were brought forward. But one thing I do think that we have to take into consideration at some point is having an appraisal of our assets. So we know where we stand with the value of the assets that we have at the station for lots of reasons, regardless of whether we go to consolidation or we go to an independent, full-time, professional fire model. That should be something that's put on a future budget to talk, or a future agenda to talk about.
All right. Go ahead, Linda. What were you going to say?
I'm sorry. My little yellow light doesn't always come on. Anyway, I was just going to ask, is that something that you would like? Do we need to, are you requesting from us at this time to do a cost analysis on the equipment?
It would be an appraisal, and I think that should be an agenda item on a future agenda. It's not something that we can discuss tonight because it's not on the agenda.
John, can you put that on the next one?
So that's only capital expenditures, appraising our, essentially our capital expenditures. We had a list, I believe, that was going from the last time we did an audit of some sort with, I think it was either 5 bugles or with R&W. One of those two. Anyways, so we should have something as a baseline to go off of, but we'll have to dig in. I'll get with Jenny and ask about that. But yes, I can have that added as an item on the next agenda if that's something that we'll want to discuss. So is there any other information to be brought forth on the consolidation conversation?
I guess we did come to a consensus that most of any potential consolidation would be addressed primarily in our intergovernmental agreement, our shared service agreement. So that consensus was made that that's where we thought the focus of any understanding might be, and some draft work was intended to be done eventually on that for the purposes of discussion.
And I spent a considerable amount of time researching information and models and billing models, consolidation models throughout the state of Wisconsin. I shared all of that research with Brian. So we went into the discussions with quite a bit of background information and research and information that was current. So we do have some ideas how different municipalities have modeled shared services agreements, both within a fire, paramedic safety model and other shared services models.
All right, sounds good. All right, let's move on to our next item of business, discussion and possible action regarding requested items to be discussed with the city of Janesville. It sounds like we covered a little bit about this already, but Brian, do you have anything else you want to add? Or our mayor?
I think we've really said what we outlined. It was kind of an introductory thing. We wanted to make it clear what we were trying to achieve in trying to identify a model. So I think most of that, what we knew was told here.
Mayor, do you have anything to add?
No, but if anybody on the commission wants me to forward them the research that I reviewed and the studies and the modeling that I reviewed, just send me an email and I'd be happy to share that with you all.
Yeah, there was good data. The shared services, especially related to fire and EMS, was interesting data.
I think that information would be kind of nice to have for the commissioners to have if everyone is comfortable with that, sending it out to the commission members, either sending it to Jenny or sending it to myself, Mayor, and we'll get that sent to the commission members as good background information.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Bill.
There is an additional issue that has come up to the public that I don't quite know how to ask the question, but you know, the newspapers are full of the discussion of town of Beloit and the Janesville Fire Department. I don't know what impact that might have, so I'm not quite sure what the question is, but it's likely that scenario might have some impact on what kind of a contract or what kind of an arrangement Janesville might be offering, or what kind of a consolidation we might have.
Interesting point, Bill. That might be a conversation that Brian and Mayor Welch can have with the chief going through this process. Is things that are discussing is how the impact of other potential contracts or discussions of other potential contracts or consolidations might look. At the same time, I'm vaguely familiar with what you're referring to. I've heard some discussions upon, you know, like Beloit, for example, the township, interesting in talking with Janesville on certain matters about consolidation. I'm sure Chief Rhodes can speak a lot more than I can to that, but I think that would be a good point to bring up. If we are going through this model, how does this model affect upon the very short term and those conversations that are being had with other municipalities, and does it help share the cost? Is it going to alleviate some of the questions that we might already have that are being answered through their conversations? So I think that's a very fair point.
I view it very positively. I think, you know, this broader discussion is very good, but it might have an impact on what eventually happens.
Sure. All right. Anything else on this topic? All right. Hearing none, we'll proceed to our next item of business, discussion of possible action regarding when the Joint Fire Commission attorney should be present at meetings. This is just a reiteration of what happened last month. This is on the agenda. I think it was Linda, you requested this one on the agenda. Did you have anything else you want to talk about on this one?
Well, I was just wondering, I mean, how far into what we're doing are we going to go with speaking with Janesville before our attorney is part of those discussions.
It's a really good point too. So I think just looking at it from an objective standpoint, the point where a decision is made between municipalities on the direction we're going to go is probably going to be the point where an attorney will need to enter the conversation to facilitate the legal writing and how that looks. I'm sure we could always reference her if we have any questions about how something might look, or in the discussions that take place. That's certainly something that can happen at any point. But I think formally, what she'll end up will be when we do actual writing and making an intergovernmental agreement or MOU of some sort to facilitate legal action.
I think at last month's meeting, we asked if there was any money in the 2020 budget. I don't think we budgeted any money, did we, Dan, for attorney fees in 2020?
No.
No.
That wasn't put into the 2021 budget. Do you know, is that preliminary put in? I don't recognize that as an expense.
No.
Okay. Alrighty.
Everyone,
We
this
probably
is
should.
Chief Rhodes. In the process right now that I've been directed to follow, we're working on looking at the shared services agreement and then a timeline, what consolidation would look like from the Janesville perspective. And so I don't know if we need the attorney yet. I think when it comes to maybe the actual, we're going to consolidate, that's probably when we should do the attorney, unless you want your attorney to review potentially an updated memorandum, which you probably do. I don't see a big budget need for that right now, but that's up to the commission.
Thank you, Chief.
I have a question. Dan, outside services, that didn't include any legal?
No, that's just Janesville.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if there's no other discussion on the attorney, then we'll move on to new business. Discussion and possible action regarding the 2021 proposed budget. So I guess, Dan, do you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, Inga, do you want to set it up so I can do a shared screen?
You should be good now. Can you get it?
Yeah. I
Okay.
just gotta. Can I? Yeah. Okay. So I just want to first start out and say I'm a little confused when I hear some comments saying that the 2021 budget that I sent out numerous times to the full town board and city council did not contain the $15 an hour. I thought I did a pretty good job in that email of breaking down the staffing costs on a daily basis, of illustrating that there were 2 paid on premise folks at $15 an hour. That would be of a firefighter class, and then 1 paid on premise paramedic, in addition to our 1 full-time personnel, and then 1 additional firefighter on the weekend at $15 an hour. So I don't know where the confusion was on the 2021 budget related to that. But I tried to put together just a 10-point PowerPoint slide that summarizes the 2 documents that were emailed out several times over the past couple weeks. But I wanted to start out just some background stuff. On July 30th, Chief Rhodes, myself, Pete, Chris, and Jeremy all met to begin to put together a preliminary 2021 budget that included the wage increases, because that was when we were recognizing that was going to be necessitated. And I know that's, I believe, when the conversation started about how do we do this for 2020. And as we talked about quite a bit earlier tonight, this is trying to make sure that we have the money for 2021 before we do anything for 2022. And then last week, the same group, Pete was unable to make that one. We re-looked at the 2021 budget, and that's what we have brought forth tonight. That includes all that stuff along with the equalized value allocations. In terms of the 2021 budget, we only examined the operating budget. Capital was not discussed. And we know that there is a need in the near future for an ambulance to the tune of close to $300,000. But once again, that was not included in any of the numbers sent out, because we all felt, as I believe most people on this commission believe, the most critical component right now is making sure that the men and women of the department are compensated for the type of work that the community expects from them. And then trying to communicate the funding methodologies. And then just as background, the city and towns of Milton have increased their funding by almost $100,000 over the last 5 years. And the contracted towns have increased their contribution just under $15,000. And the basis for our current cost sharing methodology is an unknown. So in the 2021 staffing schedule, as I outlined in several of the emails, 1 full-time paramedic, 1 paid-on-call paramedic, 2 paid-on-call firefighters at $15 an hour, and then 1 paid-on-call firefighter on the weekends at $15 an hour. The points balance pool of money will remain at $3,500, and the lieutenant stipend for 6 individuals will continue to remain at $1,250 a month. And the 2021 proposed wage and benefits total just over $1 million, which is just over $180,000 increase from 2020, and it represents 75% of the budget. This is just a quick summary of the more detailed budget that was emailed out to you. And Inga has done a great job of putting this document presentation and the 2 documents that were emailed out over the past several weeks on the city website for the public and for an ease of finding those documents from this meeting and past meetings. So the net levy that would be needed from all partners, including contracted towns, is just over 1.1 million. One of the issues, as everyone here knows, is there's no legal way for the city and towns of Milton to increase the levy by the $85,000 each in 2020 for the 2021 budget year. And it's obviously not realistic to do a short-term borrowing for our operations, because as Al alluded to a little bit ago, that creates a structural deficit and just causes more problems down the road from a financial perspective. And based on methodologies of using equalized value, it would appear that the city and town of Milton have been contributing more than their fair share to the department for a number of years. And at this point, staff has not had any discussion on the sharing of capital equipment. So and then 2 cost sharing methodologies were shared with everyone in those same emails. The first option looked strictly at equalized value, as we discussed several times during the consolidation or standalone options. It's an allocation that's used throughout the state of Wisconsin for allocating school districts levies, county levies, and tech school levies. And one of the reasons is that amount changes every August by the Department of Revenue. And the general sense that I received anyway from many of the members of this body is they felt that was an appropriate allocation to the long-term funding issues that this department has faced for a number of years. And I would just add, school districts don't base their levy on the number of students in any jurisdiction. It is strictly based on equalized value, right, wrong, or indifferent. It's been generally accepted in the entire state of Wisconsin. Option 2, because obviously we're looking at 2021 as kind of a bridge year or an interim year or whatever kind of vernacular you want to use, because obviously these costs that we're talking about are not the same costs that we were talking about under the 2 scenarios under consolidation and or a standalone. So this option maintains an equal percentage contribution by the city and town, with the remaining balance split amongst the 4 contracted towns on an equalized basis. In the short term, this eliminates any kind of concern on ownership percentages changing or votes or any of some of those concerns that could arise with the city having a larger percentage, if you will, of the budget. It lowers the impact on 2021 for the contracted towns, and it begins to share costs on the commonly used methodology in Wisconsin on equalized value. And then these last 2 slides just show the increase or decrease over 2020 that each entity would see with a $1.1 million proposed tax levy. So on the straight up equalized, the town of Milton would pay less, the city would pay more, and all the contracted towns would pay more. And under the equal contribution method, the city and town would obviously pay the same amount, and the percentage increases for each of the townships would just be a lower increase, although still from a percentage standpoint, high. That's the end of the PowerPoint slide. That summarizes the 2 handouts that I sent several times. I don't know if Chief Rhodes or Chris or Jeremy want to add anything.
I guess I would ask too, what is it that that Beth and John wanted to see that wasn't in here?
I guess I could speak to that. We had discussed at our last meeting about it looks like looking at the PowerPoint that you have here, you do have a $15 an hour wage for part-time and paid on call. So that, if you can go back a few. So yeah, so it does say 2 paid on call firefighters at $15 an hour. So maybe it was just a miscommunication.
It was.
Okay.
If I can speak to that, I think the conversation was that we needed to look to next year, but if it's already been built into next year, I was not understanding why we couldn't look to 2020 if 2021 was already built into these numbers. And so I'm sorry for miscommunicating. I do have one question though, Dan, if possible, is I'm going to the different towns that we are servicing. One of the questions was, when we're looking at equalized value, and I didn't know the answer to this. Are we looking at the entire community's equalized value, but if we're only servicing a portion, or did we look to that portion of the community that we service?
We just looked at that percentage of.
We did, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the information that was requested from last meeting, it does appear to be here, so I apologize. That must have just been looking over the numbers, or in the previous conversation we had today, it sounds like that was missed in this part. So it looks correct. It just wasn't clear on the 2020 information if that was going to be viable. But seeing as we right now are almost through September and about to go into October and still don't have another meeting until our October timeframe, ideally an implementation of an increase in wages wouldn't even be able to take effect until November. So then we're already looking at 2 months left for the year. But I think that was to the point, if we were still looking at 2020's budget, that we would be able to use the reserve fund for the 2 months or potentially 3 months of expenses for the wages and approve that for 2020. And with the plan going in that we're approving it potentially for 2021 built into the budget already. So going forward with the structure that I think that was being asked for in the 2021 budget, it was already kind of built in. So we're already under the anticipation that we're going to increase that $15 an hour wage by looking at these budgets. Am I correct in assuming that, Dan?
Well, I think the big question mark is,
You have to approve this, how we're going to pay for it.
right, we have to get everyone on board with this cost sharing methodology, whether it be option 1 or option 2 or some other, these were just 2 options that when we met on September 14th, this is kind of what we came up with. Obviously, this can be split an infinite number of ways, but we're trying to start to go down that path of utilizing the equalized value in some form.
Yeah, that's the key piece, and that's the structural deficit piece. Again, not to continue to harp on that, but this budget as presented includes everything that the Fire Commission asked for, but cannot be passed legally, cannot even be passed unless we change that funding structure, which was the point that I was making earlier before. That's the first piece of the discussion. So if we don't look at the funding structure, this budget is moot because it legally can't even pass. So it includes the $15 an hour, but legally cannot even be adopted by the 2 municipalities until that funding structure is changed. If the funding structure does not change, then there is no $15 an hour. And if we were to give $15 an hour this year and we don't change the funding structure, we can't even legally give $15 next year. So therein lies the problem. And, that's the question we've been asking since July 30th.
Yes, so both of these proposed 2021 budgets rely on restructuring the towns contracts.
There's only one 2021 budget. There's 2 options for the funding of it.
It's either the equalized value from the townships.
Each budget requires the municipalities to pay a different amount.
Oh, right. But that's just the funding source, though. The budget doesn't change under either scenario.
So the decision on ultimately at the municipal level to consider or approve relies on restructuring the contracts that are expiring, that have expired or are expiring this year.
And I think it would be this commission that could decide which option they wanted to go with. And some of the council members from the city can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the city council would say, nope, we only want to go down option 1 or only option 2. From the city standpoint, the numbers are approximately the same. I don't see that being the hurdle. The hurdle is truly with the contracted towns. They're the 3 out of the 4 have the ability to increase their levy in 2020 for budget year 2021 because they meet the statutory ability because they have populations under 3,000 in their townships.
Well, there is a third option, and that is not to change the overall levy amount for fire department.
But then that doesn't address the underlying concerns.
That's true. It's absolutely true. But without the ability to know any future contracts, the municipalities, the town of Milton and the city of Milton, that theoretically have no choice but to only approve where they were at this past year.
Well, by default, yes, Brian. So I guess it kind of comes down to if we put contracts together and the contracts are based off the values that have been proposed to us tonight, reflecting either the equalized value or the what was the other one, Dan? I know there's the second.
Let me go back to shared screen here.
But either way, one of those options has to go before the municipalities, and yes, we're overall going to have some sort of impact on each individual municipality, the town and the city, but like I think what's been stated, and I think we're all on the same page, if the one township does not have the ability to fund the increase, because we're looking at a substantial increase anywhere from 90 to 172% between the municipalities that we're servicing on the one option, leaves us with one question: what happens if one part of the system says no? We won't be able to afford that. Either they're going to have to find the service elsewhere, or we're going to have to manipulate the budget again to try to accommodate the increases in the goals and objectives that we're trying to achieve for department staff for sustainable service. So we're kind of, I understand Al's point, and it's been clear from day one, but it still remains, if we're going to go through, we have to propose something. And if we get it turned down, we'll have to create an alternative.
In the next 6 weeks.
Right, correct.
And
So-
it's the town of Koshkonong that has the population over 3,000. So the good news is they're the smallest piece, and they're, in terms of nominal dollars, their increase is, $9,300.
Sure. And even Johnstown, you're talking, for Johnstown's a smaller population, but the dollar amount, again, is a smaller compared to like Town of Harmony. That's a substantial increase. So I think at this point, we need to propose something. And if this solves the problem with the wage issue, and it is an equitable means, if we're going for equity, we can look at that. If we're looking just equal contributions, we can go there as well. I'm not opposed to either direction. I just think we need to have some significant conversation tonight and expect to make a decision on which direction we want to go so we can prepare contracts for the 2021 year.
I'd be willing to make a motion.
Wait.
I'm not going to make the motion at this time,
Okay.
but I would be willing to make a motion once I understand which of these two models the commission might want to recommend to the municipalities, to the city and the town of Milton.
Go ahead, Teresa.
I would be interested in hearing from anyone from the 4 townships that are here at the meeting tonight.
So I know we got Jeff here tonight. Jeff, do you want to speak on this in Town of Harmony?
Yeah, it's actually quite shocking. One of the things that is hard for me to understand is, I understand that you receive roughly 1,000 calls a year from the fire department for either fire or EMS. And I asked the chief if he could get me some figures. And in the last 3 years, including this year, the highest count for Harmony Township was 71 calls. If you see that increase, we're talking about $1,300 a call. That just seems kind of steep. The other thing is the equalized value. I'm a little concerned about that because, in fact, we do have very few calls in Harmony Township compared to what obviously the Milton Township and the city of Milton handle. I know the city of Janesville covers roughly about 20%, and I'm not sure of the figure that we pay them, but it just seems like the increase would be pretty hard to swallow for the people of Harmony Township. Obviously, I'd like to learn more about this. I do agree with paying the fire department personnel more. I don't know how the Harmony Township could help, but I think we need to do something to keep firemen at your departments. I do personally feel that I would like to keep a standalone department. I would hate to lose the identity by joining the city of Janesville. I think I've said that in the past, but it just seems like all the figures that you're throwing at us seem to be awful high, and I think I'd have a hard time getting the people of Harmony Township to agree with that. Although basically it almost is like we would have no other option. Just a few comments there on my part.
Thank you, Jeff. So as far as the equalized value goes, that's based off of the percentage of the municipality that is using that service, right, Dan? So as far as user fee, it essentially is, we're basing it off like a user fee, essentially. Is that correct? The amount of service that we provide to that municipality?
Yeah, so let me,
Well, it compares the valuation of each
Yeah.
municipality.
Right.
so so like in Harmony's case, their total equalized value is for 2020 is 307 million and change. And so when I came up with the percentages, we cover about 80% of their township. So I took 80% of that 307,000. Actually, I'll just share this screen here so everyone can see it. Picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So we cover 80% of the town of Harmony. This is their total equalized value. So this is how much I allocated towards the fire department. And then I ran the same calculation for the town of Lima, Koshkonong, and Johnstown. And so that's how we got the percentages on just the straight up equalized. And then on the level funding for the city and town of Milton, I ran a similar calculation with whatever the remaining dollars were on the 396,000 times 2. I just ran that same methodology though. But we are not charging them as if we're covering 100%.
And to be clear, all of these numbers we're discussing are operating costs, not capital expenditures.
Right. So, you know, we have spent, as the mayor had pointed out earlier, over the last several years, we have spent, at least in the last 6 years, I know we've spent north of $1 million on equipment that has never been included in any of the cost figures, from what I can tell or anyone else can tell, to the townships. And so, and this budget doesn't include any capital component. So these increases are strictly based on that summary of costs, of the 1 million plus of labor and the various operating costs from fuel to vehicle maintenance and turnout gear and all that sort of stuff.
Go ahead, Linda.
Thank you. I was just wondering, Jeff, is it easier if we go with the equalized value? Will it soften it if we only do half of it in 21 and the full amount in 22?
I'm not real sure on that. The other concern that I have is when you guys decide to do what you're going to do, then I worry about, are you going to need a new fire department? And so the third year, they're going to be approaching the various townships for more money to build a new fire department because of, you know, that you're now a full-time department and, you know, you've made a few changes. So that kind of concerns me. I don't know, just again, it just seems like a lot of money for what little amount we actually get, we actually are being used, or we use of your facility. And of course, obviously we could have some bad times in the future where we would use a lot more calls or whatever it might be, but I don't know. I'm willing to look at things and try to do my best to get the people to understand this. I will say that I've only attended one other meeting. Unfortunately, I was out of town for the August meeting, and so I'm not real clear on everything. I would like to get some of, like, for example, the program that you just showed us, if I could get a copy of that. Also, the mayor had mentioned where she had done some studying on different contracts with other municipalities. I would be in favor of receiving something like that so I could study that myself as well. I hope that answers your question, Linda.
Well, we knew that this was not going to be easy, and we knew that the price was going to be higher. But like it was stated, there is nobody knows how that first formula came through. And, you know, one thing that you have to consider too is you're not just paying for those calls in your community. I mean, you're paying for that property in your community also. And I think that I think that your taxpayers probably understand that. You know, I mean, it's fire and paramedic. And I
understand that. Obviously, I was in law enforcement for 35 years, so I understand you have to have that type of stuff. And I do believe people would understand it to a certain extent. The thing that scares me as a taxpayer is it just seems like there's constant, people asking for more and more money. You got Blackhawk Tech, Milton School District, just constantly asking for more money. And I think we figured out it would be roughly $400 a year per household for tax increases on just the fire department from one of your handouts that you handed out in regards to that. And that's a lot of money.
So you're talking about the potential impact of the 152. Okay, gotcha. I was going to say on the current budget it's a little different, but if you're referring to the consolidated, that makes sense.
I think that's a good point, though. That if in fact we can't come up with a new cost sharing arrangement, we're kind of spitting in the wind as far as the consolidation is concerned. Doing either the consolidation or the standalone professional department is going to cost more, as Jeff pointed out. And unless we can come up with a cost sharing model that is viewed by the partners in this department, contracting communities as well as the primary communities, unless we can come up with some sort of a suitable agreement on that, then we're not headed in the direction of either a standalone professional department or the consolidation model.
If I could address and explain the old model of how we came up with numbers for contracts with towns and where it leads us today to a proposed contract with towns. Having been on the commission for 15 plus years, the early discussions were, we did everything we possibly could do to help out our neighbors, our contract towns that were within our means. And where we've come today with operating costs and what we view as necessary increased operating costs, primarily to wages, with the biggest part of that component, we've run out of creative ways to have keep a lesser impact on the contract towns. We just can't do that anymore. We've run out of opportunities and and other ideas to be able to do that. So in a previous model, it was solely based on let's do what we can to help out our neighbors. The costs are just overbearing now, and we can't find any other way.
That's true, Brian. Ever since probably 15, 20 years ago, we had that 1% to 2% increase each year, approximately, for the contract towns, but the expenses were actually significantly higher, percentage-wise, each year for operating costs. And both the city of Milton and the township of Milton absorbed those costs, anticipating that at some point it would level out. It never leveled out. So now we reached that point where the cost imbalance between the operating costs and the capital costs, which are being split half and half, 50-50 by the Milton City and the township, are now asking the contracted towns to help contribute more to help cover those significant increase. And it is a sticker shock. It absolutely is. But unfortunately, it's years of having small increases in the contracted towns' overall budget contribution to now that number looks a lot larger because it should have happened. The number should have been spread out over more years. And it's not anyone's fault necessarily. It's just the people that we had working at the department are becoming harder and harder to find and retain. And that's creating a significant impact on how we can operate and serve you guys as contracted towns. So
I don't recall 15 years ago what the overall operating budget was for the fire department, but I'm pretty confident in saying it was much less than half of the 2020 operating budget. So if I recall correctly, if I do, I believe it's cost more than twice as much to operate this department as it did with some 15 years ago. And we're looking at another substantial increase in the staffing model as for 2021.
And at this time, I don't believe any conversations on the commission have taken place as far as with the new fire department, how those costs were going to be shared, other than with most recent information that has been proposed for the standalone model or the consolidation model as far as how capital expenses will work. Right now, we're only talking operational expenses, but we haven't really discussed if a fire truck needs to be purchased, will that reflect upon the costs of the townships, the contracted townships? And at this point, I don't believe that conversation has been met, but it had been for many years, the contracted towns never contributed to capital expenses. It was kind of that flat line percentage increase each year for the budget and to help cover for the operational expenses. So I guess it kind of looks a little bit both ways. Bill, did you have something that you want to say?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry. I saw that you unmuted. So,
and I think as far as there's obviously lots of different ways that because it's our department, so we can decide how we want to split the cost. I just go back to the equalize. It might not be quote unquote the fairest. You could have a township or a municipality inside a school district that has 100 children out of 3,000, but they're still going to pay the same amount based on equalized value because that's just the way the state of Wisconsin is set up. I'm not saying it's the best methodology, but it's the one that we've all come to accept for probably decades. So that's just my thoughts and on the equalize.
Are there any of the other townships represented that would care to weigh in?
Just for information, I have one other board member that's present, Jerry Larson. I don't know if he has anything to say. I also have our town attorney in on the meeting, and the reason I had him here tonight was because obviously if something is decided where we're going to have to raise our levy, I wanted him to be aware of that so he could help us with that in the future.
So I'd like to stress where we're at with our levy process. We need to get an approved levy from the electors before the end of the year, obviously. And with the timeline of posting requirements and budget decisions that need to be made, we need to go at the very most 2.5 months from now, the electors need to approve of some sort of a levy. If you back that timetable up with posting requirements and municipal decisions prior to that, before the electors are notified of what's being requested, this decision really needs to be made in the next 4 weeks. At least some model to move forward with. So we really can't wait on proposing some sort of a model, understanding that there may be some default mode, they're not funding something.
If I
Mr.
could-
Larson, go ahead, Beth.
I'm sorry, no, let's let him speak first, please.
Yep, Mr. Larson, you have the floor if you have some comments that you wanted to say.
You're muted.
Still muted.
By the way, I'm not sure how well I explained what I was trying to explain.
There we go.
Al may have a better input on explaining that timeline.
All right. This is probably in a way more toward Chairman Jeff, but I guess my feeling in regards to, Harmony Township is at our next board meeting, I would want to add to the agenda exploring other options we may have as a township for fire and EMS protection. Just because it's, it pays to shop around, and it's not that what is being proposed is an outrageous number. It is an outrageous increase. And granted, Harmony Township has increased significantly, I'm sure, over the last 15 years. Adding $126,000 to $152,000 to our annual budget is going to be difficult for a lot of the taxpayers in our township, I believe.
I would agree. We'll certainly have it on the next agenda. One of the other things that I think for the rest of you, that would basically, the cost of the increase would basically wipe out our budget for any road repairs. And again, that's just a lot of money. I understand completely, though, what you guys are trying to do, and I commend that you're doing it. I just hope we can come up with some kind of solution to be as least painful as possible.
And I definitely appreciate you being here tonight, because it shows that you want to learn about the conversations we're having and figure out how we can make this work, because no one's looking to point the stick and then give you the short end of the stick. That's not been the intention from day one. We are in a really difficult situation, and we're trying to make this as reasonable as possible. And unfortunately, it comes down to the almighty dollar. How can we make this work between municipal contracts? So I think you understand that point. I'm not going to beat the argument anymore. I think you understand that pretty clear. So if you want the information regarding the budget information, if you haven't already received it, I can forward it over to you. It looked like the mayor had made a couple comments about receiving emails to try to forward you some information. So if you have any further questions, feel free to contact myself or either municipality if you have further questions about what's taking place, because transparency is important, and making sure that you understand all the details of the financials and where they're coming from I don't want things to be of a question. At the end of the day, you're going to have the same questions as what your taxpayers are going to have, and you're going to want to ensure that you transmit that information as efficiently as possible so they understand and can make the decision that's best for them, and telling you how that's going to affect them and the financial impact. So.
Sure. I do have just one quick question. In the last few years, have we had a lot of governmental increases in regards to ways that the fire departments and EMTs have to do things, which has added quite a bit of cost to the fire departments?
The biggest part of our budget has been wages. So we're looking at wages right now, and that increase has been substantial. If we're going from $10 an hour to $15 an hour, we're doubling, potentially doubling our expenses and wages. So
Sure.
Wages have been the highest dollar amount of increase over the past, at least 10 years. And it's because we are getting busier, and we've had a steady climb in calls. And it's not specifically one area of calls, but like, for the township, for example, or if it's Johnstown, or it's kind of scattered amongst calls in general have increased. And yes, there may be calls a little bit more than other municipalities, but at the end of the day, that service still needs to be provided, and having that service available is providing some of that cost.
Mr. Kleins, it's Chief Rhodes. Can I comment on your question, sir?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. So part of the problem too is that the volunteer or paid on call population or workforce that we heavily relied on for years did a fine job. Unfortunately, as you know, across America, it is drying up, and so we've experienced that here in Rock County and the state. I'm on a lot of chief blogs across the state, and everybody is struggling to get the trucks out the door. And so the big reason for this is we have to have people. And so we also have to train them. And it's harder for a paid on call or a volunteer firefighter to work a full-time job. And then they also have to be certified firefighters too, have to have that training. And that's a state mandate. And then they have to have medical training, either first responder or EMT. So it's a huge educational commitment on top of just the volunteer side of things. And that's really, in a nutshell, that's what's put us in this crux. And unfortunately, we've got it, whether it's 71 calls or 7 or 700, we have to have a valid firefighting force that is available to respond to any emergency. And so that's really the true cause of this over the years. And this is a problem across America.
Very good. Thank you.
If I could add to that, please, Mr. Chair. So as a commission, we've been very resistive to allowing any larger impacts to this date. But I believe we're all convinced today that we no longer can resist at the level we have resisted. I've been a big part of that resistance, and not that it wasn't deserving, but we've been trying to pinch these pennies so drastically, and now we can't do that any longer at the level we've been doing it. We need to step up now, and we're at that point right now where we're more convinced than ever it's now.
This is a very important topic point. I really would like input from all commission members if we could. It's worth hearing your feedback. So I'd like to get commission members' feedback on this topic, and if we can make a decision tonight on what direction we choose to pursue, it gives us a stable grounds to move forward with, and whether we go through option 1 or option 2 for the equalized value or the equal contribution, at some point we have to make a decision, and I think tonight will need to be that night. We can't wait on these decisions anymore. We have budgets coming up, and we need to make these recommendations to our municipalities.
Mr. Chair, I'd appreciate hearing from the Town of Milton representatives as far as the two options. Option 2 is there really in terms of representation, but there are differences in terms of costs. From Town of Milton standpoint, what's your thought?
Brian?
Well, option 2, basically the difference is option 2 doesn't consider equalized valuation between the city of Milton and the town of Milton.
Yeah.
In all reality, that's the difference between the two models that are in front of us, at least. I'm not giving an opinion on the two models, but that's the difference between the two models. If I'm misspeaking, Dan, let me know, but
Nope, you're spot on.
That did make a different impact on the contract towns. If we ignore equalized value between the city and the town of Milton, it still takes equalized value of the contract towns into account.
Hey, Jim, you're with us tonight too. Do you have anything that you wanted to add since you are a town board member?
Yeah, John, I'm just listening in, and I kind of agree with go with the equalization amongst everybody. But I'd like to hear what Harmony, if they're going to go shopping, how high is the other options?
Well,
If I can speak to that a little bit, and it's not specifically for Harmony, it's the point that I was gonna make before, and I don't want to speak for them, but I can tell you that at Lima's meeting last night, this conversation occurred. And they do have services for part of their community serviced by Whitewater. And so the question was raised as to whether they should look to having Whitewater service their entire community, or going the other way and asking if there's a possibility that Milton could service the entire. It truly was just speculation on their part. During that conversation then, and that was why I had asked Dan if how we arrived at the equalized value based on that. Sorry, my lights keep going off in my office. And so that I could express back to them, knowing also that they may not be on the call tonight because not all of them have access to internet. And that is one of the drawbacks to having the Zoom meeting, unfortunately, to have them drawn into this conversation was their inability to do so. So I'm not speaking for them. I'm just telling you of a conversation that they had. I will also say that that their clerk said that one of the true positives with Milton not only is our exceptional service, and they're very pleased with the service that they have received from us when necessary, was also that they are not billed additionally in terms of if the person who received the services did not pay the bill, then the clerk, or actually in any case, the clerk actually is given the bills from Whitewater. She has to get those to the people and to have those paid. So that is one thing that Milton does not do, and she, of course, was very pleased with that also.
Just for a point of clarification, you don't need internet for this. You just need a telephone. That's all you need is a telephone to call in. So if that wasn't made clear, that you just need a phone, then that's unfortunate. I mean, the only other option you have is if you feel like the other townships are not being given an opportunity to be heard by this commission, is to schedule a informational session with them ASAP.
I'm sorry if that's what you were feeling. I absolutely am not. To tell you the truth,
I meant for the other township
either. So I'm just expressing that I didn't have phone either. There is no judgment one way or another, nor am I saying that there was a barrier to them attending. I'm just saying potentially that's the case. I don't know in particular.
I did reach out prior. This would have been when we first had the conversations about municipalities and the interaction with them and potential contract changes. I did reach out to the clerks and the chairs and left messages. I actually only received Koshkanon. I talked to them in over the phone, but I had reached out to them and I had not received responses back. So I understand people have busy lives and maybe things get jumbled around in their daily schedules, but it has been difficult to contact people. And, you know, like Lima, for example, they don't have a town website. So they're limited communication with whatever their town clerk has. So we do have a little bit of a technological gap between some municipalities simply because they have different platforms of where their information is distributed through. So I understand your point, Beth. But to that point, Teresa, did you have anything that you wanted to add on this conversation? You've been kind of quiet tonight.
You're muted.
Okay. No, I don't have anything to add. I've, you know, been listening and it's been very informative, but nothing that I could add.
Okay. Bill, anything?
Just a statement that I would be inclined to go with the equalized assessed valuation model. If we're going to ask the towns to do that, I think we should, use that model across the board.
And Linda, anything else that you wanted to bring up?
I don't have any questions. I kind of feel like between the Courier and our websites, I feel like people have had the opportunity, and the Janesville Gazette, to see that we've had some very important issues that have come across this commission. I'm sorry if you didn't get it when you thought that you should get it, and this would be to anybody that's out there, but this commission is charged to take care of this. And we also have budgets, our own budgets, that we have to keep in mind too. And we have heard from our fire department, our EMTs, our paramedics. These people deserve more. And if Harmony or anybody else wants to look into another department, then that's fine. We will make the adjustments that we have to. But I agree with Bill. I'm inclined to go in that direction. We have to fund this department. It's for everybody's benefit.
One of the other advantages to making a decision tonight on which model you want to decide to pursue as a commission gives the maximum amount of time to those municipalities as well to help plan and get this before their elected bodies and essentially before their electors. So I feel like this is something that if we are going to pursue one of these options, of course, we want to make this as reasonable of an impact on each contracted service provider, but as well as the main contributors. And that's been a challenge, a balancing act, trying to figure out which one is really going to be more advantageous. And I'm strongly recommending as a commission that we decide which option we want to pursue so we can propose something for our municipalities. Go ahead, Linda.
I would like to make a motion that we go with option 2.
Option 2 is to equal contribution, which would essentially be the...
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I mean option 1, the equalized value.
Okay. So option 1 is the equalized value, which has been the most conversation we've had tonight about, which would put the contributing municipalities, City of Milton at 416,000 and some change, Town of Milton at 336,000, Town of Harmony at 225, Town of Lima at 40,000, Town of Koshkan at 19, and Johnstown at 59,000. So that's kind of your breakdown. Is there a second to that motion?
I would second.
Seconded by Beth. So we'll proceed to discussion on the motion, proposing a budget for 2021. I'll entertain as much discussion as we have, because I think that's important.
Do people want me to leave this up on the screen, or do you want me to take it down?
Take it down.
Okay.
Can I get clarification?
Was that a
on the motion,
second by
please?
Bill Wilson or who?
Beth,
Second by Beth.
Beth?
correct.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Brian.
So the motion on the floor is for a funding recommendation to the municipalities.
Correct.
It doesn't specifically address the total proposed budget categories. So I see there's two issues. One is the overall proposed budget, and then there's the two proposed options on how to fund it. So is the motion on the floor for the funding mechanism, or does it also include recommending the budget that was proposed in front of us?
It
So
includes both.
Yeah, this fixes the $15 an hour problem that we were discussing, where we'll be able to pay more for our wages for our firefighter EMS for 2021. It doesn't discuss anything regarding the other questions that have been asked about consolidation or standalone. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. This is just addressing that wage increase, and that's being reflected in the 2021 budget.
Yeah, so there's one drafted proposed 2021 budget in front of us that hasn't been suggested to be modified, but there's two funding mechanisms that are proposed as well.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying. So the budget is the budget. That is the base number, but you're referring to how that budget is shared amongst the municipalities, Brian. So you would prefer to have this in two separate motions, one to approve the budget and one to approve the funding model?
I only wanted to clarify what the motion is.
Okay. I at this time, all right, there we go. Linda, do you want to clarify your motion?
Oh my God.
Is that this?
So this, and the motion then is to recommend to the town of Milton and the city.
Is there someone that's trying to talk the beef fry? Oh, did they go?
Scare them away?
Maybe.
I think it was their dog.
I'm pretty intimidating.
That would be a good
And to
clarification.
clarify again, the motion is the recommendation to the municipalities, to the town of Milton and the city of Milton. So
Correct.
the City council and the town board of Milton will resolve the levy-ish question. Because it isn't within the authority of the fire commission to approve a final budget without it being funded.
Correct. It sounds
is
like
a
this is a recommendation. Yeah.
So do you want me to change?
Linda, can you, I would your motion.
Okay. I make the motion that we accept the 2021 proposed budget and that we accept the funding mechanism option 1.
Linda, this would be a recommendation to the municipalities.
Okay,
So
recommendation.
Yeah, just to clarify that again. So the motion was to recommend to the municipalities to approve the 2021 budget. So, and then off of that, it is within our own curfew as a commission to take care of contracts. The municipalities don't have to directly agree on how contracted services are provided. That is something the commission body can handle. So one can be a recommendation to the municipalities. The other can be to approve the contracted service costs as stated on the 2021 budget is how I would recommend that.
So moved.
And Beth, do you still second the motion? Or all right, and it's been seconded. All right, let's move on to discussion. Hopefully this makes it a little easier. Any discussion on the current motion? All right, hearing none.
Chair, I'd like
Go
to have
ahead,
Jenny,
Mr.
Jenny read back the motion, please. Or Inga.
I have the motion from Linda Clark to recommend to municipalities to approve the 2021 budget presented on 9/24/20 and to go with option 1, the equalized value to do with proposed municipality allocation. Seconded by Beth Drew.
So that second option was, that is within the purview of the commission to handle, so it doesn't need to be proposed to the municipalities, because the municipalities are only concerned about funding the options that they contribute. How the money comes out of the budget regardless, is just my understanding, and I guess Dan or Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that if a contracted service town has received service from the Milton Fire Department, that is strictly billed through the commission and through the fire department, which is a revenue source, not as something that we have to go through the municipalities to approve.
Correct.
Okay, so just make sure that we're, stating, maybe it'd be easier to handle this in 2 motions, but I'm fine with putting them into 1 as long as it's clear. So that we'll handle this specifically, the contracted part of it and the commission. All right. So if that's clear as mud, we'll continue.
I'm sorry, I probably should have waited till the next item.
That's okay. We can kind of handle it in 1 for the most part. It's all regarding the same topic. All right. Since this is a budget item, I think that requires a roll call vote. So I guess we'll go down the list here. Mr. Meyer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Drew, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Clark, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Roosh, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Mr. Himmel? I'm sorry,
Wilson.
I can barely. Wilson, I'm sorry, Bill Wilson. Yeah. How do you vote?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries unanimously. All right, so that will mean that we'll propose to each contracted municipality the increases for 2021. And at the next meeting, we can certainly have the discussions if more municipalities would like to continue in the conversation. If they have extremely vivid concerns that we need to examine, we could talk about it at that time. But for the most part, this solidifies the direction the commission has intended on going. So if there's no other discussion on our 2021 budget, we'll continue on to our next proposed item on the agenda.
I just have one question.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Do you want Dan to send something out to the township?
Yes, so I think between either department staff, myself, and Dan, let's just make sure we draft a very similar contract that we drafted last year, and we'll include a little bit more language, though, that expresses why some of the increases have taken place between the staffing increase in costs and other associated costs associated with the staffing model. I think that would be a great explanation to include in the contract costs, is to explain that. But Dan, would you be available tomorrow for that?
Yes, just probably not between 10 and 11.
Okay. And Chief Rhodes, would you be available as well too?
Sure, I got to check my calendar really quick. Stand by.
Okay, sounds good. We can continue on. So we'll move on to our next item of business, which is the discussion of possible action regarding town contracts. We've already discussed this topic. If there's no other points that we want to bring up on this, I proceed to the next item on the agenda.
One point, do we want to go as far as to consider sending out a proposed contract based on the proposed approval on option 1 funding? Do we want to send out proposed contracts to these contract towns?
And I think that was the intention, to send out proposed contracts, and that way that during the budget planning time that each municipality has, they can kind of factor that cost in, and if that will, what they'll have to do to accomplish the increase, if any.
Because this relies heavily on their seriously addressing the contract proposal.
That's true.
Got the impression that the letter is going out with the contract so that the letter can have an explanation for the townships.
That would be logical.
Yep. So the goal is to have some sort of explanation for the increase in costs.
Yeah, I think from a municipality budgeting standpoint, whether you send out the contracts or a letter, the key is we need to know if they're in or out. And I don't mean to be, kind of so, just kind of flippant about it, but if anybody decides that they're out, and that's perfectly understandable if they are, it changes the funding structure then throughout the system for each municipality.
Mhm.
So, sending a contract out really does put them in a position to respond. And in fact, I would recommend that in addition to the contract and the letter, that there be some kind of timeline as to when they would respond to let us know, because, they're going to want to know too. And obviously they won't know until their budgets pass, if it's going to pass, but we need to know if they're in or out. If somebody gets that letter and they say, no way, Jose, then we can start to change our budget. But if somebody else gets the letter and says, okay, yeah, this isn't great, but okay, we get it, we know. So I think we need to kind of have a timeline on it too, because as Brian pointed out, we've got about 6 weeks really to, go through this process. I mean, unfortunately, the time to have kind of long and robust conversations has passed. And that, we can have those long and robust conversations, but they need to happen now. We can't continue to kind of kick this down the road. Again, I keep going back to that July 30th meeting, but this has been on the table since July 30th. So, if we're going to send letters and contracts, it'd be, we kind of need to know if folks are in or out. Otherwise, the town of Milton and the city of Milton can't adopt a budget either.
And there is a process, as I had talked about one of the meetings ago, that the towns that have populations under 3,000 do have the ability to increase their levy via a special meeting or at their annual meeting. But as with most things related to the budget, I'm sure there's noticing requirements, and given that I'm assuming we all use the Milton Courier as our official newspaper, there's issues with a weekly paper. So there's probably a 2 to 3 week lag just to get that on agendas and things of that nature also.
So is a 1 month time frame respectable, which would be, I guess we could set our next monthly meeting if it's not in accordance with the respective time frame we need. But if around the 24th of next month, it still is kind of short. But I can't expedite the process. I can't expect the towns to expedite their process beyond a reasonable measure. So I would say a month should be enough time to have those conversations at their next board meeting in October. And then we can reconvene several weeks prior to that November meeting that needs to take place, the township's meeting of electors, so they can make a decision on whether or not they're going to go through with an increase in their levy. I guess
I'd like to point out from the fire commission standpoint, until we've gone through all of our municipal levy meetings of the electors, it's not reasonable to assume that the commission can't approve a 2021 budget finally until sometime in December, after all these levy meetings have been completed. So the final 2021 budget, until it's funded through these processes, I can't see any practical way of the commission approving a budget prior to sometime in December. But
I think the 1 month time frame, though, Brian, is just for the municipalities to have a discussion on it and decide whether or not they want to continue. And then that puts us in a path where we can either adjust fire if we need to figure out what we need to do to try to accommodate the budget. If we do have a municipality that says we're going to go other options, or we're going to examine, if this is really what's going to be best for our municipality. But you're right.
Absolutely.
You're right.
And So as town chair, I'm going to stress that our levy process or our decisions to move forward with the levy process, that readiness is going to be completed before the end of October so that we can post it and go to a meeting of electors sometime late November.
So I think at this time, the next.
Maybe we should make it 3 weeks instead of 4.
Well, that puts us at the 21st roughly is our next meeting date, the Wednesday, the 21st. That would be approximately a month. It'll be just a little under if you want to leave it on our next regularly scheduled meeting.
I just don't want the city and the township to run into problems with our budgets.
Well, we have a recommendation from the commission for what that budget looks like in 2021. So we can pencil that in tentatively now and to determine whether or not that will accommodate. But, you know, final approval won't take place, like Brian was saying, until late November. So I guess the question is that 3.5 week time frame enough time for people from each municipality to have those discussions? I guess that's kind of what I'm looking for clarification on.
I doubt they'll be able to have the actual meeting to approve a levy increase, but we could at least be told if they're going to pursue that or if they're going to pursue other options. If that makes sense, John.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I hate to rush the process because the process working slowly makes sure everyone is involved and has the same information. But we are running out of time, and this would have been, advantageous to start 6 months ago or 3 months ago, but we weren't really planning at budget time, and now we're kind of working our way closer and closer to budget due date. So unfortunately, it kind of comes down to a short time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's no other conversation about that, then we'll just leave it at our next regularly scheduled meeting, and we'll have an idea from each municipality by then if they're interested in pursuing the current contract that we present to them. Okay, so we'll go on to our next item of business, which is discussion and possible action regarding union contracts with full-time personnel. I had to add this on the agenda. I was contacted by the union president in Janesville about the 3 full-time personnel joining the union in our current fire department. And this is, we kind of anticipated something happening like this in the near future. And I have yet to receive the documents from the union president, but it sounds like we'll have to negotiate union contracts for our 3 full-time personnel for the 2021 year. So I just wanted to make people aware of that on the commission, and so it's going to be something that I don't think it'll be too strenuous of a process. He seemed very understanding of the current situation, but I just wanted to ensure that we all are aware that that's going to be something likely taking place at our next meeting that we'll need to be discussing.
How is that going to affect our 2021 budget?
Yeah, I'm not really sure on that one yet. That's going to be somewhat on the conversations with the union, and what that looks like yet, I think, is a little to be determined. I don't know if Chief Rhodes, do you have anything that you wanted to add on that point?
No, I think, when you get into contract negotiations, it may impact wages, benefits, working conditions, and it may be a cost increase in that perspective. But I think overall, allowing our folks to join or to recognize them as union members is a really good move, and I would absolutely support that.
I think the biggest question comes down to in those negotiations what that additional cost is. Are we talking, $10 in the budget, or are we talking $20,000 in the budget or more? We don't really know yet. And you're right, Linda, that is going to be a deciding factor in how we can move forward. But right now we have to kind of move forward as planned until those negotiations have taken place, unfortunately.
So they need our blessing to join the union, or I don't have a problem with it.
Chief Rhodes, do you want to speak to that point? and how that process works? I'm not familiar with that process.
I'm not entirely familiar with it too. I am a little bit. I think talking to local 580 president that would like the commission to recognize them as union members. I haven't seen the paperwork on anything, John. I don't know if you've got anything to share, but this is a fairly normal process.
I have not seen any paperwork yet. I was contacted several weeks ago and just needed to, I was waiting on that paperwork to come through and it hadn't come through yet. So I'll have to reach back out to him again and figure out what paperwork he's referring to and kind of go down that path. But at this point, it's more for information wise that's been coming down the pipe road, and now it will be coming to negotiations in the very near future. So my goal will be to invite them to the next commission meeting, and we'll have that discussion in October.
Could we get a copy of anything with regard to that ahead of time so that we can all look at it?
Absolutely. Once I receive it, I can send it out to everybody.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the chief's report.
Hang on, let me get unmuted here. Okay, sorry about that. You have been sent the financial report by Dan, and it seems though we are tracking within budget, so that's really good. As far as the month of August 2020, fire department training, SCB operations and emergency procedures were to 23 personnel at 3 hours each, which was 69 staff hours. Other company training is basic pump operations, power saw training, aerial ladder familiarization, and vehicle stabilization equipment familiarization. Total of 112 staff hours, so which is really exciting because we're starting to get back to some training, although we know COVID is around, and then everybody must wear their mask, and they've been doing a really good job at that. So grateful to the men and women of the fire department to step up and want to train in this environment. And it's good to start sharpening the skills. So that's a good thing. That's good to see. And then also the Milton High School Cadets started on September 2nd. And that's the end of my report. I can answer any questions.
How many cadets?
We currently have 3, and then next quarter we could have up to 5.
Hey, good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's a lot of future firefighters right there.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jenny, for answering that for me. Thank you.
If there's no other items under the chief's report, we'll move to the president's report. Is Scott here tonight? I didn't see him.
He was on, but he just left on an ambulance call.
Okay. Do we want to move on from the president's report, or does anybody tonight able to speak to that?
I can tell you that the association has not met because of the COVID, but we will go back to in-person meeting in October.
I think one thing that was asked is if the pancake breakfast will be taking place again, and if that will be like a carry-out option for people. Do you know if the association has thought about that or what they want to do?
We have not. I'm pretty sure we'll discuss that and decide the first week in October.
Okay. Yeah, I know that's always a big event, and it brings a lot of people in. So I know there's some concern and that the tradition will be broken if it doesn't happen, and so also some concerns for the safety aspects. So we're trying to just trying to do what we can, I think. But I'd like to just hear if that's going to take place, yay or nay. Even if it's like just carry out, that'd be kind of a nice option. But okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Chief Rhodes. yeah, if it happens, it will not be a traditional, we'll put everybody inside the fire station and sitting next to each other. So it will definitely be modified if it does happen.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Chief. Alrighty. So general items. Do we have any general items tonight? I do have one thing. For virtual meetings, I know that there is a little bit of concern on virtual meetings that it is sometimes difficult to get information out, and sometimes things get misheard because of audio and microphones don't pick up properly. So, are we still interested in moving with virtual meetings at this time, or would we like to start transitioning back into in-person meetings with the guidelines in place for safety procedures? What works best for people?
Virtual.
Virtual.
Virtual from here too.
So as of Saturday, I'm heading to Virginia for 4 months. It was kind of one of those things, training exercises. So I will be available through virtual. So that would work easiest in my book. But I know in-person meetings, there's nothing like an in-person meeting to facilitate information transfer, especially when we're talking a lot about budgets and trying to get contract information to our municipal contracts. So I understand that kind of disconnect a little bit. But if this is the best media, we'll continue with it.
Inga, you said, where's Inga?
I'm right here.
Okay, you had listed a link to a web page. Are you able to post the recordings of these meetings to that web page or no?
Yes, and I have the previous recordings. They're all on that web page right now. So if there's any additional information that you want included on the web page, let me know and we can add it in.
Wonderful.
And I'll put that. I'll put that link. I'm sorry. I'll put that link in the chat just quick too.
Go ahead, Bill.
Under general items, I'd just like to thank Chairman Clentz and Board Member Larson for coming. We understand this is real difficult. It's difficult for us as well, and it's better to have you in the same virtual room and to have some discussion about it.
Thank you, Bill. I'd also like to thank the Fire Commission for inviting us and let you know that I appreciate what you guys are doing, and hopefully Harmony Township can work with you and get this problem solved. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have one point. I intended to give some recognition to Inga. Thank you, Inga, for hosting these Zoom meetings.
Not a problem. As long as you complete the census by September 30th.
Hey, everyone, this is Ernie, and I too want to thank you on behalf of the men and women of the fire department for making this hard decision tonight. I'm grateful. It says a lot, and thank you so much. It wasn't easy. Thank you.
And to some of the fire department staff that are on the meeting tonight, again, thank you to you as well. You've been listening to these conversations for the past however long, more than a year, trying to figure out how to best stabilize the department in a manner that protects you and also ensures that that we have a fair system in place for all people at the fire department. And it is definitely a stressful process, and I know it's not been fun having uncertainty and what that's going to look like in the future. But this is a very solid step in the direction of knowing that we are definitely here to ensure the service is provided to our community, regardless of the circumstances, that pandemic or not. We're still going to do our best to accommodate our fire department staff to a full potential for our community. So I thank you again for being very versatile in the situations that we've been facing, and for being resilient and staying with it and not quitting as a result of the obstacles that we face. So thank you again for being here tonight, Chief Lucas, Chief Parker, and Chief Rhodes, and also Chief Maury, and all the department staff. I really, really appreciate it. And I think all the commission members here agree that we couldn't have the department that we have without our people. We have wonderful people, and we do our best to take care of them, even if it's a slow process. So.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
If there's no other information to be discussed for general items, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. So we got two. Wow, a lot of people wanting to chip in there. So motion by Linda, seconded by Brian to adjourn the meeting. Reminder, our next scheduled meeting date is November 21st. That is a Wednesday, the third Wednesday of the month. And oh, it is October. Oof, what did I say? September? Oof,
November.
but a little late. So
What time?
that's a normal 7 o'clock meeting. That's a normal meeting.
Okay. Do we want to keep it at 7 o'clock? We seem to be going pretty late.
Yeah, we are.
Well, tonight was I was supposed to be an early meeting, and it's kind of came late because of a lot of conversation about budget. But I guess that can be to be determined at this point. Let's plan for 7 o'clock, and if I need to change it to 6 because we receive feedback from the municipal contracts that they want to discuss, then there'll be more to discuss. And then we can kind of adjust fire and go down that 6 o'clock route instead of 7. So we'll publish that on the agenda, and I'll make sure everybody knows.
Thank you.
All right, all those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Bye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Be safe, John.
Thanks, Linda.